I know you guys want the F12 update, and I'm sorry that it's taken this long to give you one, but it's a lot of work. Mike's been working diligently.
It takes a long time. We were trying to show you the entire process of every step. People wanted to see it done quite a bit quicker. We decided to speed up this process, and by speeding it up, I mean show you what we have done over the last, man, it's been a while. It's been like,
It's almost 6 weeks.
yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of progress that we have made on the car. And I think in the future, the videos are gonna be more condensed.
Yeah.
There's gonna be more stuff happening. You can really see a visual change in what the car looks like.
We have 2 videos coming out. There'll be this video and then a video right after it where quite a few things come together. I think it's gonna really satisfy you guys, which means,
well, wait,
Mike needs
we
what?
also have the announcement to
What
make.
announcement?
Well, guys, stay tuned to the end of this video. So watch all this cool progress that we've done, and then we've got an announcement at the end.
You're gonna tell them the announcement?
We're gonna tell them the announcement later.
Okay.
Later. All right, come on, let's go. All right, guys. Check this out. Fuel cell has arrived. Check this thing out. I'm excited. There's so many parts that we need for this build, and this is like one of the big key components that we need right now to get the fab work done and place it in the car. There's a lot of stuff that's built around the fuel cell. We still have to get a radiator, figure out where we're gonna mount the radiator. A lot of things just have to happen in a certain order for everything to come together into like a very cohesive build. So I am very glad that we got this cell. Thanks to the guys at Radium Engineering. They make some really nice stuff. That thing is absolutely sick. Basically, this is an aluminum shell here, and then inside of there is a drop-in bladder with foam around it, and then this is a surge tank, so it's actually like a canister with one pump outside that's pumping from the cell into this container, and inside of that container, there's 3 more fuel pumps that are gonna feed the engine. So we went with 3 pumps in the tank, where I only run 2 on mine, but my car only makes 1100 horsepower to the wheels. This thing's gonna make more, so we went with 3 main pumps and 1 lift pump. So there are 4 fuel pumps inside of this thing, all packaged nicely. I've got an idea of where it's gonna go, but I haven't started cutting anything out for it yet. I could just throw this tank in there, but I wanna show you guys what's inside of it. And I also just like to double check everything. So even when I buy something brand new, even from a brand that I really trust, like Radium, I still like to know that everything is put together properly, all the plugs are locked in properly. That's just something I've been doing for a long time to make sure that I know every single thing on the car is done perfectly. There's no way it's gonna have any failures. There it is. So this is inside of the fuel cell, fills up from here in this little filter, and then it pumps it into this tank. And inside of this tank is 3 more fuel pumps like this. That's a very nice, simple, tidy unit. And that will eliminate any fuel slosh. This foam that keeps the fuel from just sloshing around like crazy. So it acts as a damper. It'll slow the fuel from moving around, keep the fuel flatter. It won't churn up as much. It won't get air in the fuel. So that's pretty nice there. We've got the tank that you can actually see moving around inside of here, because that is the bladder, and that is also what stops any puncture or anything like that from happening. So if you do get in a wreck and this fuel cell gets completely crushed, that's going to stay together. It's going to deform, but it's not going to puncture and let the fuel spray everywhere. Fuel cells and proper surge tanks are very important on anything, especially high performance stuff. Before I drop this back in, I just want to talk about the 2 main types of fuel systems. One is a return style system, which is what this is set up for. So basically, all these pumps are going into the canister, and the canister pumps are pumping it out of this fitting here to the engine across the fuel rails, and anything that doesn't get used by the engine is going to go through a fuel pressure regulator. So that's going to control what the fuel pressure is, and then the excess is going to come out and go into the return, and the return is inside of that canister, so all the fuel is basically filled up all the time. Now the other type of fuel system is a returnless. So there is no fuel return line. Basically, it has a brushless fuel pump. It's a little bit more complex to get those set up properly. I know this system really well, so that's why we went with this, and that's a really common thing to do in any race car. This is going to be such an expensive build. Just the engine alone is going to be $100,000 plus. We have to do everything that we can to make sure that we don't have any issues and we don't damage that motor. Not only is it the money, but it's also the time. We'd have to source another block, which is hard to find. So much work. This is cheap insurance. This isn't cheap compared to everything else. It is cheap insurance. Well, that's basically the idea I was looking for a tank that was a little bit shorter this way and maybe a little bit longer. If we got a custom tank made, that would be a 6 week to 8 week process, maybe longer. You'd have to design everything, cut all the metal, make a custom bladder for it. Yeah, that's obviously a lot of work. Still pretty far in and narrow enough to where we can build a really nice crash structure around here and still have quite a bit of room if the car does back into a wall or tag something. Like basically we're building this car to do that on purpose. This will still be safe. I need to get this sheet metal panel out and it looks like it's just got a bunch of rivets. Some spots are covered with glue, so I'll have to get the wire wheel and pull some of that stuff off, and then I can come in with a drill and just drill all those rivets out. And I think that this whole panel all the way to the back here will come out with just drilling out some spot welds. I don't think it's actually welded in. It is welded. I thought there were rivets under here, but there's some welds. We'll have to do some cutting and some drilling. This is actually really fighting me. I think it might be time for the Sawzall. That was a bit easier. All right, so I got most of the sheet metal trimmed out of the way. We didn't do everything yet. We'll have to get in there and just kind of clean everything up. But for now, we got the majority out. I put a stack of cardboard on top of the diff there to lift the tank up just a little bit, so I know I have clearance. That is pretty spot on to where I was hoping that it would land. That looks really good. I think that's gonna work out well. Now I just need to design how I'm going to mount it in the car. Another thing I have to plan out is where we're gonna add the fuel filler. We could build something that comes off of it and goes over and runs into where the stock filler is, but I don't think that's necessary. We might just do something that comes right off the back. Then we have a panel on the trunk lid. It would be like a quick fill nozzle. There's a hole cut out in the sheet metal panel, so when the trunk closes, that's still accessible. You don't have to open the trunk or anything. And then we can use one of those quick fill dump cans, just bring it over and click it right in, fill up the car super fast. It's very efficient, no fuel spills. That's probably the way we'll go.
All right, you guys, I've been working hard for the last 2 weeks making content for you guys, but when I'm gone, I miss my family. I miss my wife. And my wife is super grateful that I work so hard. And I'm sure your significant other is super grateful that you work so hard for your family as well. The challenge is 2 weeks being on the road, I don't have time to take care of myself, which is a problem because my wife's flying down here tonight, which means I need to thank today's sponsor, Manscaped, because Manscaped's gonna help me take care of my undercarriage so my wife can get under there and show me how grateful she is. We got 30 minutes before wifey lands. Let's get to what's in this package. This is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It has been upgraded from the 4.0. First of all, this is the trimmer blade that you guys all know and love. This is gonna get that top thick layer off, but then what do? You pop this thing off and you go down to the foil blade. This gets right down to the skin. Bam! Now you're rocking and rolling. When traveling with this, it has a lock so it doesn't get caught, turned on. I swear, that's my razor. Now, speaking of travel, giving you a travel case. And below that is your charging cable. With the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, they've taken grooming precision to a whole new level with their next gen dual skin safe blade heads, now accompanied by an upgraded trimmer blade and interchangeable foil blade for enhanced performance. The LED light of the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also includes an innovative aspect. The newly introduced dual temperature feature t-shirt is carefully designed to accommodate and flatter a variety of skin tones. And let's not forget the best part, it's still waterproof. That's right, rain or shine, it's trimming time. Head over to manscaped.com/DD and get your hands on the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra today. When you use my promo code DD, you'll get 20% off and free international shipping at checkout.
I know. It's been a long day.
It's been a long 2 weeks.
We got a steering column. This is a proper race car steering column to replace factory Ferrari steering column. Now this isn't a bad piece. It's got the main part of it right here that's adjustable, so this would bolt into the bottom of the dash. You've got the little lever, telescoping adjustment, and height adjustment. That's all built in. That's fairly nice. But this thing is kind of heavy, kind of clunky. We don't really need a lot of adjustment in this. This one is adjustable. It will be set up for the driver. Let me open it up and show you guys what we got in here. Ooh, quick release. Nice little part. U-joint. Some really cool billet aluminum brackets there. Got the steering column itself.
This looks so cool.
It is such a nice piece. All of this is about $1,000, which, you know, in the world of race car stuff, not very expensive for how nice of a piece it is. So this is actually a telescoping steering column as well, just like the factory one. The idea is that this is mounted under the dash, driver's holding this, and if you crash, the whole front of the car could crash and get pushed back, and this just slides together, so you don't get a steering wheel in the face. Nice piece, lightweight, aluminum body, really nice bearings in here, so it's very smooth. And then it has this clamp bracket here, so these would go to the dash bar, and then clamp on there.
Oh, that's
like that.
cool.
So you can adjust the height, you can adjust the depth of this as well, so you can get it dialed in exactly where you'd want it. Really nice steering wheel quick release, which is splined on the inside, so it goes onto these splines and bolts on, so we don't have to do any welding. Standard style quick release with those splines. Fits pretty tight. Sparco steering wheel onto that. And we've also got this little bushing. This will go through the firewall. And then on the other end, we have the U-joint. So U-joint goes on, and we'll actually take this piece of tubing, because this goes to the Ferrari steering rack. We'll cut this off here and we'll weld another piece onto the end of this to get it to connect. So we'll get that to be the right length. We'll be good to go. To install this, we do need to cut a hole in the firewall because we're not going to have the steering column coming out of the exact same spot that it was from the factory. As you can see, the U-joint on the factory one was pretty high. So this was twisted in the car, and this was set up to be the center of where the driver sits. This steering column's a bit different. As you can see, it's longer. It wouldn't fit exactly like the original column. The seat was also further over to the left, and the steering wheel is shifted over to the left. Now we've pushed everything towards the center of the car, so we can have a straight steering column. The driver is closer to the center of the car. It's better for weight. It's better for side impacts. The door bars are a little farther away from you, and obviously it's better for the driver's head and where the roll cage sits. So we would just bolt this guy on there. Yep.
Hardware, just like that, it's done. Is it gonna make the satisfying ding when you click it in?
The click.
Yeah!
Yes. So I'm gonna check to see how this fits in the car and see what I have to cut. So it's gonna go in right next to the brake pedal and sit up here, and then we'll have those. This is slidable, so we'll get those brackets clamped on here. But to do that, I am gonna have to take this plate out and then cut a notch in it so that those can actually clamp down. First step is cutting that Tilton brake pedal assembly bracket out of there. Super easy. All right, so I got the pedal mount cut out and to cut the bandsaw so we can bolt the steering column in. Now I just have to tack it back in place and we're good to go. So we want to put the seat back in here to make sure that we get the steering column set up at the right height. Well, it is hitting. Yeah, because I have to cut that bar out. I wanted to leave it in. The seat will be able to drop into its position, and then I can make sure that the steering column is exactly centered right where I want it. All right, now this will go in there. with no obstructions. Perfect. Put the pedal assembly back in. All right, now we can bolt the steering column in. Just bolt through here. Hop in here and connect the steering wheel.
Tim, come here, dude. This is a big moment. This is the first time it's going in the car.
Let's see.
Oh, sick.
Bring it over just a touch.
So shiny, Mark.
Let me put this on.
Woo! All right, tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead and start snugging them down. I feel like that's pretty centered up. We've just got enough clearance there from the brake pedal.
Does that feel a little close, or does that feel right?
It is close, but I have the
Not a lot of room to work with.
adjustability here. So, yeah, that looks good. Snug it up right there. Okay, well, nothing is bolted down completely tight yet, but for mock-up right now, I think this feels pretty good. It feels good there. E-brake, room here, shifter over here. Looks pretty good.
Driving the car, Mike.
Ready to go.
You're doing it, Mike.
Right in front of me, flames shooting out of the hood. Can't wait for that. So now that we have the steering column bolted in place, but there's not much room left to move it because we are about we're about a ½ inch away from hitting the side of the brake pedal. So we could come in a little closer, trim this boot down to get it over, but I think it feels pretty good. The next step is to cut a hole in the firewall so we can get that shaft to go through. Now I'm not gonna do a really precise hole because it's right on the edge of a curve and I'm gonna have to actually cut out more material and then build like a little box that comes out and then over and around to be able to mount that bushing that's gonna go on the firewall to hold the end of the steering column tight. So this end is secured, but we need to secure the other end also so it doesn't shift around. I'm gonna take this back out, probably take the pedal assembly out also, and then cut a hole in the firewall. Yo.
So all this spot that it was supposed to be just glue and seam sealer,
Yep.
it was all welded.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Welded, glued, and riveted.
yeah.
Trifecta. Him, as you can see, in the back seat, grinding, cutting, fitting. Sean's over here. He's got the boxes for the base plates welded up. So it's actually still a little warm. So that's all welded up now. These are bolted in with a steel sandwich plate underneath with nuts welded to it. So it's gonna be really strong. Now we haven't welded the main hoop onto the base plate yet because we want all the other tubes basically fit, tacked in place before we do that. These boxes still need to be slid out of the way, which is why they're not welded into the car. That way we can drop this down, and when we get the rest of the tubes in there, we can get to all of the back sides of the tubes and be able to weld together that joint 100% all the way around and not have any gaps. We've got the rear base plates. You can see that side fairly well. It's just being held up by a magnet at this point, but that's a steel plate that's gonna get bolted onto the back. Same idea as the base plates on the floor. These tubes are almost all done being fitted up. It looks pretty good in there. It's coming together now. We've got all the other tubes are already bent and notched. There's little bits of areas that need to get barrel sanded and just make sure the fit's perfect. Once all that's done, those will get tacked in place. All the tubes will be in place, and then Sean will come in and weld everything from the bottom. We'll move the box out of the way. We'll drop the whole cage down, weld all the tops, push the whole cage back up, put the base plate boxes back in, weld the plates to the boxes, weld the boxes to the chassis. Lots of work left, but it is finally moving along, and it's cool to see the progress that's being made because all of these tubes were just barely tacked in place before. Now they're actually fully welded, and as you can see, Sean's a really good welder, so the welds came out great. Thanks to Sean for coming in and helping me out, and as usual, Tim being back here and getting stuff done. Tim's just making sure those base plates in the rear are in the right spot. That one wasn't in the right spot, so he just smacked it out of the way and get out of here. He's got to make some mods to that one to get it perfect. But he was also dialing in all this stuff that we cut back here. So When we do the fuel cell, it's going to get welded, and there's gonna be like square tubes here that get welded down to the chassis. So we wanted to make sure that all the tabs that we didn't need, all the studs, obviously you could leave some studs sticking out. It just doesn't look clean. It's, you know, if you're working on the car, it's a way to snag your hand on something or your clothing. So cleaning it up, making it look as nice as possible, also making it as user-friendly basically. So when we're working on the car, this whole section in the rear is gonna get chopped. The whole quarter panel is gonna get cut and removed off of the car. The only reason we haven't done that yet is because the body kit manufacturer that Damon's working with, I know they have a scan of this car and they've been developing the bodywork for it, but I wanna make sure that they have a scan of not just the surface, but also of all of this area and of this whole section back here and the taillight buckets. What we usually do on drift cars is this whole thing would be replaced with a fiberglass or carbon fiber or Kevlar panel, and that holds the taillights in place. That's where the bumper lines up with all that stuff like basically built into one fiberglass piece or whatever. You can tap a wall, this thing will flex over and pop back out, and it will have some scratches on it, but it won't be wrecked. When you have a taillight housing that's held in by some metal piece from behind, and then the fiberglass fender that's sitting on top of it, it'll smack the taillight, it'll break the taillight, it'll bend all the sheet metal stuff, and so a lot of work to replace everything, extra time that's unnecessary. And I'm guessing that these Ferrari F12 taillights are not cheap. So if we tap a wall and it's a $2,000 taillight, it's a lot of money for just tapping a wall. So we're trying to eliminate any unnecessary costs by getting rid of as many Ferrari parts as possible and making our own parts, but also the parts that we are saving, like the headlights, like the taillights, we want those to last. We don't want to go through a bunch of those in one day of filming. Get someone out here to scan it, send the file over to the guys that are making the body panel parts so they can add that section into their scan and basically have this full piece here. Hopefully we'll know soon that if they do have it or if we need to scan it, and if it does need to get scanned, we'll get somebody out here to scan it so then we can actually cut the quarter panels off of this thing and start moving forward with the rear section of the car and all the bash bar. This stock bumper, that's got to go. That thing is big, heavy, bulky. There's just so many parts back here that we don't need, and to save us the hassle of anything back here getting bent, we'll chop it all off and make our own stuff. So here's the front boxes that we trimmed down quite a bit. So how we had them before, they were about an inch longer. So we chopped them down, cut the sides down. You can see the backing plate in there with the nuts that are welded to it. So that's basically gonna go in this area. So that will get completely welded to the chassis. And then the top plate actually hangs over the side and onto the original rocker panel as well as this. So spread the load out a little more, and we're able to get this trimmed down quite a bit. So you're not, your feet aren't right next to this thing. It's not sticking out. You're not gonna bump your legs into it. So that's been moving forward with all those. And then Tim actually spent quite a bit of time in the car the other day. Because it's aluminum, once again, it is difficult to work with. And the glue that Ferrari used to basically bond all of the undercoating or whatever stuff they had in here that was like a sound deadening was so stuck on there. But if you use an aggressive wire wheel, it digs into the aluminum and leaves a lot of marks. So Tim came through here with that eraser wheel looking thing, knocked a bunch of that stuff off, and actually did the entire underside of the roof panel as well, because once the cage is welded in, it's gonna be really hard to access that. And it had like this texture to it, this glue. So if we had it painted and that got sprayed over, it would just look like garbage. Even though it was probably, what, 4 or 5 hours you spent in the car just sanding that stuff? Yeah. Yeah, it's just tons of time and all these little details that are gonna make the build that much better in the end. But I mean, literally hundreds of hours spent inside the car, outside the car, wherever, just cleaning up things like studs, rivets, knocking them down, sanding them smooth, and getting it all dialed in. So there's no sharp edges, no rough spots. It takes a lot of time to do that. So one of the last things that we were talking about before, we actually have these bolts. So since the chassis is aluminum, right, we can't weld the roll cage directly to the aluminum. Steel and aluminum, it's not weldable. So we put this bolt in here, tightened it down, and basically sanded to fit. So now the main hoop touches that bolt. Once it's all dialed in and everything else is welded in place, then we'll go in and weld that whole section there so that this cage, the main hoop, is tied back into the pillars. It'll strengthen everything up, make the car a lot stiffer, and reinforce all of that extra stuff that we cut out of the roof section. So it's all the little details that make a difference. All right, so those are the main updates on the F12. I think in the next 2 days, D-Sport is gonna have the engine components ready for us to pick up. Now, they're not completely done yet. I know that the crankshaft got WPC coating, and then they're working on balancing the crankshaft now. They also have the heads. The heads got welded up, the DFI ports. I think they're gonna get those back and then do another fly cut and basically machine the head down so it's all smooth. And then we can pick up the parts from them to stick the heads back on the block and the oil pan back on the block. And then we have basically a dummy motor, so we can set that back into the chassis. We can build the bell housing, but when we get the engine block back, we can set that back in the car, get the transmission and everything mounted up to it. And then at that point, we can make a shifter and e-brake mount inside the car. So that's one more component that we're gonna finish off in the interior. Big metal plate that's going to basically mount the shifter and mount the e-brake right next to it. We'll have to get all those angles and everything right, and then make sure it's strong enough because the sheet metal that's in the tunnel is pretty weak and flimsy, so we might have to add some reinforcements there. Big thing that I think is gonna be a lot of fun, a lot of work, but it's gonna be a lot of fun, is building the exhaust system for this car. All stainless steel coming forward, pipes going across the front, and then mounting 2 brand new turbos that are also on order. That's gonna be probably the biggest visual change that we're gonna have for quite some time, is when that's all together. It is going to look insane. I think you guys are gonna be pretty excited to see that when it comes together. I have a lot of parts to order for that. All those parts cost a lot of money. There's so much left to do.
Yo! I hope you guys are excited for these big updates. I know I am. I can't wait. Thank you so much to Mike and the team for getting so much done, and there's so much more to show you guys.
We've got some big stuff coming real soon. We've got a lot of really cool parts on order that should be showing up in the next few days.
Yes. New parts, overnight parts from Italy. So the big announcement is the car ain't going to SEMA. And I know that some of you might be like, oh, that's devastating. The truth is, think about it. You're probably not going to SEMA anyhow, so who cares? We don't really care because the car doesn't have any major sponsors attached to it. So that means we have no commitments to have the car at SEMA. Fun to have a goal and a target and a timeline to push yourself to try to accomplish something, to then go and then show it off. But for us and what we're doing with the car, it's neither here nor there. Like Mike and I talked about, we don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, so when we started building this car, the plan was let's go testing sometime maybe in January.
Yeah.
Not even completely done, not body kit, not all this stuff, just to get the car to do a shakedown at a track.
Yeah.
Damon wanted it at SEMA because he didn't honestly realize how much work this build was going to be.
I'm not doing any of it. So there's a lot to this, obviously, and instead of moving this and having like a rolling chassis with a few things in it, and maybe, you know, at one point we thought we'd have the motor in it, maybe just the manifolds built, just to show off some of the work, that the craftsmanship that Mike and the team have been putting in. We were just like, who cares? We don't want to move it. We want to get more stuff done. We want to get the big things that are now coming in. Like we talked about, these parts that are going to land. The engine is going to be available pretty soon.
Yep.
So we want to get that going. The best way to do that is not to send it to Vegas for 2 weeks and delay the project any further.
Yeah, exactly. And then honestly, we had a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. We had
a
the
few
whole
things.
720 project, which turned into a huge project instead of a 3-day deal.
Yeah. The Murcielago was in Florida. I had to go and deal with that. Our track day that was coming up, which we got that all out of the way. So speaking of that, there is one car from the DD fleet that will be going to SEMA. For the handful of you that might be going and you're interested in seeing something, we're gonna send the Super Trofeo Evo 2. It'll be at the Innoza Tech booth. So you can actually go and see that super gloss DDE 720 GTR pink in person.
And that is huge because it never looks like it does in person on videos or pictures. So you guys will watch the track videos, the reveal video, all that. But if you have a chance to go to SEMA and see that car and then in their booth, it will blow your mind. It is such a crazy color, and I can't believe that they got that color out of a wrap.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is really crazy. So go and check that car out, and it's kind of neat. We just did this epic race series at Laguna Seca, so you'll be able to go and actually see that car in person and get hands-on and check it all out. You know, I'll have the guys they'll have the door probably open and stuff, so you can look at the inside in the cockpit. It is nothing like a street car, so.
Yeah. Don't forget, the next video, we're gonna have a lot more updates, so get excited about the F12 again.
Yeah, get ready. Mike's got some big moves happening, and you're gonna see things come together. And one of my favorite parts is we're all gonna get to watch how he builds this insane exhaust manifold from scratch. And the whole goal of this is to bring back the Italian V12 sound with the turbo.